So when I was a young boy, I had various pets, dogs and cats, naturally. And the first one that I can remember was this black German Shepherd mix, I believe, named Ranger, and that's the first dog I can remember. And over the years, I had various pets, and I'd get close to them like boys do with their dogs and their cats. But eventually, I had to face the sad truth that all pet owners, have to face, that sooner or later you're going to lose them. That's a very sad fact, that if you have a lot of pets over the years, you're going to see a lot of them die, and then some will disappear and you just won't ever see them again. And so as I got older, I reached a point where I simply stopped getting attached to animals and didn't have any pets anymore. And I didn't bother because I just didn't want to lose them. So for a long time I wasn't much of an animal person. But that all changed several years ago when somebody gave me as a gift this small little long-haired gray cat, beautiful cat, and named him Grady and raised him from a kitten. He was a beautiful cat, long-haired, gray, just as sweet as he could be, a wonderful animal. And another cat that lived in the neighborhood, they're able to get in through the wrought iron gate and the front because, there's this wall around the property, but there's this wrought iron gate, and cats and small animals can climb through and get in that way. But Grady disappeared one day in January of 2013, and I don't know what happened, don't know how it happened, but he was unfortunately found dead floating in a neighbor's swimming pool. No idea how that happened, but it was sad to lose him. But while he was still alive, this skinny black cat that I eventually called Blackie — these names are not going to be real creative here, they're just names of convenience — but there was this kind of skinny, pathetic cat, solid black, cat that always seemed to be perpetually skinny, and he had problems losing his hair and various things, and so started feeding him. And he was also a very nervous, jittery cat. He would run away at the, even approach him, he would run away, but started feeding him and eventually was able to pet him, and he became a lot more friendly, and he pretty much took up residence here, started living here. And even though he's a lot friendlier and he'll jump up in my lap and things, he's still kind of skittish and nervous. And even though there are two other cats here, I tend to give him a lot more attention. I don't know what happened in his background. I think it has to do with the way they're treated, and that's why some animals are more vicious and some are nervous. And this one was never a mean cat in any way. He was just nervous, but he was actually a sweet cat when you got to know him. And then down the road there was another stray that started hanging around in the neighborhood, and this cat was a chubby cat, whereas Blackie was a skinny cat that seemed to be perpetually skinny. This new cat, not a new cat because he's actually an older, more middle-aged cat, I think, was roaming around the neighborhood crying, and I know he would go from house to house and get food wherever he could. Don't know where he came from, don't know how it happened, but he ended up in the neighborhood scavenging food wherever he could get. And so he got hurt in a fight of some kind with some animal and showed up at the house that way. So I started feeding him and treated his wounds and started to hold him and pet him and things like that. And I guess cats, they're very smart animals, but I think there is something to the fact that they get imprinted on their masters because they definitely know who their friends are. And they will attach themselves to masters, and they're open to other people too, but cats have a way of knowing who their friends and enemies are. Very intelligent animals. And this cat was kind of a bigger boned and chubbier cat with a sort of classic orange and white design. Orange and white, and a very cuddly, smooth fur, and would hang around all the time. And just with a little bit of attention, he latched on to me too. So I started hanging around. He started hanging around all the time, getting fed all the time. And then there were two. But eventually, a third cat started showing up for dinner. And when the others would be through the fence, and they got to where they stayed inside just about all the time, especially this orange and white cat, who I named Tangy, by the way, for Tangerine. Like I said, these names are not especially creative. They're just more names of convenience. And then a third cat, a female cat, started hanging around, and beautiful cat. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And so she would get fed dinner too, and it wasn't long before she took up residence here as well. And all three of these cats are extremely intelligent and extremely sweet, precious animals. They're very loyal and they're very loving. And so through the process of just getting helped, Tangy getting treated and fed, and the others getting fed as well, I ended up with 3 cats living here. So I went from a person with no animals, no pets, to 3 that now live here. And I'm actually glad to have them. You know, for years it was this thing that, you know, I didn't want to get too attached to animals because I knew that eventually you would lose them, and I'll eventually lose these 3 too. But that doesn't seem to matter right now because they're very loving, cuddly, sweet companions, and it's just good to see them come home at the end of the day. So I went from a no pet person to actually a 3 cat person. 3 cats are permanent residents here. And like I said, I think cats know who their friends are. If I'm sitting in that recliner, as soon as Tangy sees me, the bigger orange and white cat, he'll come run and jump in my lap every time. I mean, just about every time. And Blackie will do it less so. He's the nervous, jittery one, but he still sometimes will come jump in my lap, and sometimes they'll both do it at the same time. And then you have this very attractive female cat now, and she's gray and white, and I call her Smokey. The interesting thing about her, the male cats have been fixed, the female hasn't, and she is trying to get Tangy to play all the time because it's obvious she hasn't been fixed. And so that's an interesting sight. Sometimes she doesn't seem quite as interested in Blackie. Don't know why that is. I guess cats are discriminating in the other cats that they choose for mates, just like human beings are. And so now there are 3 beautiful, lovely cats, wonderful companions who live here all the time. And very interesting how that happened. After years of not being attached to animals, suddenly I've gotten rather attached to 3, and I know that I'll lose them sooner or later, but it's just great to have them here. So there's this certain magnetism that even if you haven't had any pets for a while, haven't gotten attached to animals, you certainly can get attached to them because they're extremely loving and extremely friendly. And so now I try to take care of them, take them to the vet, feed them, and I have 3 very loyal, loving companions here, and they do make life a little more interesting and a little better in certain ways, because you know, people will turn their backs on you, but animals won't. As long as you take care of them, you know you've got them, and they're always glad to see me, and I'm always glad to see them. And so that's an interesting way that life has changed. But I have noticed one thing though. There's this 40-acre piece of property walled in. There's a wilderness area out back. Don't know what all is like there, but I leave it that way because I like it there. It helps with privacy, and I'm a big private person. But it didn't take long to notice that there are other animals other than cats who like cat food. So now there is this young possum who comes to dinner every night. And so he's gotten used to it. And I saw a raccoon out there one time. He only visited one time, but there was also a raccoon. And so now there is a possum who is a little bit of a pet too. He always runs as soon as you open the door. If he's out on the back deck eating the cat food, and he eats a lot of it, he'll run away from you. And so now there are 3 domesticated cats and 1 wild animal, and possibly more, that hang around because they enjoy cat food. So I think it's a good thing for people to have pets. I wasn't that interested in a long time because I know you always lose them, but you get attached to them mighty fast, and they're awfully intelligent animals, and they can be great companions for you. And so that's just a little bit of an interesting story how I went from 0 animals to 3 domesticated ones and a wild one, and now I have a little bit of a zoo. And it happens so easy. You get so attached to these loving little animals so easy, and I certainly did. You got any interesting pet stories? I'd be interested to hear how you came across yours. But that is my story. I just thought I would share that. Interesting how that happens.